Good morning. Can you guys hear me? Morning, Robert.
Good morning. Yeah.
Good morning, Alexis. I changed the settings, so give me a second. I'm having to admit people, because if you guys get in there before I do, that starts the meeting time. And apparently we are only going to have 40 minutes to meet, unfortunately. Let me bring everybody in. Okay. Does anybody have any questions from yesterday? Before we get started? Good so far? Morning, Mary. Okay. I want to review a little bit about what we talked about yesterday. So we're talking about how to do the comparison and contrast for your next paper, because you're looking at both sides of the issue that you're thinking about writing for your research paper. So you're going to do the research, and then you're going to organize it into at least 3 or more, if you want, basic points on both sides of the argument, right? So we talked about criteria, right? The standards that you use to judge something. So we talked about criteria for restaurants judging like the service, the taste of the food, the cleanliness. Let's do another one, because I want to talk also about then how you build your case, right? So let's say, a little morbid, but everybody in here? I'm going to shut the waiting room. Okay. So the criteria, the standards we use to judge something. So how did you decide what to wear today? Let me open up the chat. I checked the weather. Anybody else check the weather? I don't know why I checked the weather. I think it's habit because I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to choose something based on, if it's warm outside. I think it's supposed to be 70 today here. Where's everybody at? Are you guys still on campus or at home?
I'm at home.
You're at home?
Back home.
Where's home, Robert?
St. Louis.
So it's supposed to be 70 around here today. Anybody have different weather coming?
I don't know if it's about to be 70. It's raining.
It is pretty dark out there today. That's what they're saying later. It's only like 55 now. I don't know if it's supposed to get warmer after the front moves through. So I look at, is it comfortable? I'm not going anywhere. I can be comfortable. Somebody else come in. How about this? Let's say we're shopping for the apocalypse. We're in Walmart. What criteria do we use to select the things that we can get out of the store with while all the crazy people are, because that's why they're acting out there. They're like clearing out the shelves. We're in there. We've gotten in there before everybody else so that it still has a pretty good selection. What do you choose first, and then justify your decision? Type it into the chat. Morning, Ryan. What's the first thing you choose for the apocalypse? Should I specify? We probably need to know what kind of apocalypse. What kind of apocalypse would you guys like?
Nuclear apocalypse.
Nuclear? Okay. So let's say we've got a bunker somewhere and we're stocking it up. You have to know that for the criteria, right? Come on, what's the first thing you'd go for? Water. Yes, because we can survive a lot. I like this criteria, right? Well, Emma, what did you base water on? Why did you choose water first?
Because you need water to survive.
Right, because you have to have water. You can live without food for like, I think 30 or 40 days. But you can't live without water for what? Is it more than 3 days? So her criteria was, what is the very least you need to survive, right? So survival, basic survival, right? Medicine, that's a good one. Another survival criteria. Got water, medicine. Now, what kind of medicine? What are you going to go for first?
More serious medicine for like mental health issues, like stuff like that.
Probably whatever you already, I'm going to get all the medicine that I take, right? But also, like, what are some basic things you might need? If we're doing the nuclear apocalypse, right, we might think of, like, what is it, iodine pills?
Mm-hmm.
Those for radiation poisoning?
Something for radiation.
I am not an expert at all in this area. If anybody else would like to take them for our medicine needs. And food, that's a good one. For prescriptions, I might go for antibiotics. I might prioritize even within that category, right? If you get an infection, it can kill you pretty quickly, even a really minor injury. Anti-radiation. And then yeah, canned foods. Okay, any particular type of canned foods you choose over the other? Morning, Caleb.
Good morning.
Like, all the canned foods out there, you've got like meat, vegetables, right? Sauces. I mean, all of it's chosen with an eye toward survival and your specific circumstances, since we're doing the nuclear apocalypse, right? Tools, that's good. For canned food, you might look at protein, right? And then, like, you can get nasty things like scurvy if you don't have vitamin C. So I think, what, tomatoes, tomato sauce? No, I'm trying to spitball here. What kind of tools? What are you thinking, Alexis?
Well, I mean, it depends the circumstance.
Okay, well, we've got our bunker.
So you have a bunker, so I do like hammers, screwdrivers. You don't know what's gonna happen, so you gotta prepare for the worst. So whatever tools that you can get, that'll help you throughout the way.
Like multi-purpose tools.
Yeah.
What if we want to contact the outside world and see if anybody else is in another bunker?
A radio.
Wait, I read way too many post-apocalypse. So, sorry. Like radio electronics, like old school stuff. Walkie-talkies, maybe. We can communicate over distances since we presumably the phones are taken out. So here's what we kind of done. Water, then we went to medicine, food, tools, Now we're talking about communication. Okay. Well, let's say we're really lucky and like we found this store, nobody else in there, we can get whatever we want. After that, what would you see as the next need? After water, food, basics, medicine. Locks, yes. Security. Doesn't Walmart sell guns? Do they anymore? Did they stop selling guns?
Pretty crappy ones, but yeah.
Well, maybe we'll find a sports supply store later, but right now we're in Walmart, so we gotta go.
Oh,
Bikes, yes. Easier way to get around. So transportation. And maybe like a trailer or something for the bike, so we can haul stuff if we find it. You guys forgot what like everybody just has a run on right now. What is everybody buying up supposedly for no apparent reason?
I already said that.
Anyone know what there's a shortage of right
I've
now?
been talking about toilet paper.
Yes, I don't understand the toilet paper thing.
I said that in the beginning of the chat.
Oh, sorry. I have the meeting box over it, so I didn't see it.
Ah, that's all good.
Apologies. That's more of a luxury item, probably, right? Water. We might go for like when you guys were talking about equipment, filtration equipment. Like there's stuff just to you know, your bit of pitcher, whatever. Jury rig some things. Why for chemistry?
You know, additional medicine.
Medicine. Okay, that makes sense. So what are we using to decide on, we're ranking them, right? What are the most basic things we need to survive? And then we're going into the things that would be nicer to have, but still might contribute to our survival, right? Finding other people to trade with in their bunker, you know, that leads in from communication. Like short term, like just for right now, you need to drink water and eat. Then longer term, you start planning out, what am I going to need to get around and continue to gather food and supplies? You know, if I meet someone out there who's threatening, we have the guns, right? So you can see the criteria we're using, survival, but on a very sophisticated basis, like ranking, right? So after basic survival, there's like continued survival. So basically, I'm asking you guys to justify your choices, right? You would be doing the same thing in the paper, is you would state one side and explain what the other side thinks or justify. You know, what is their evidence? If you tell me water, and what is the evidence that water is the most necessary? We've moved on from criteria to providing the evidence that supports that criteria. If you don't show us, like, I might think something else is more important than medicine, okay? You have to show us. You can always find medicine later. We need this now. You can make an argument for that depending on your opinions, right? But that's the next thing. After you develop your standards for judging, so after you develop the both sides of the argument and the points you want to use, you have to look at the evidence they're using to support their viewpoint, right? So I'm using this evidence of how much I need a gun, right? Over this item. So remember the explanation of your thinking part, guys? This still applies here. Or Natty. You give us the evidence that supports your view. Okay, and then you make a judgment. So I have judged that water is more important than food first. My criteria is you can't live without water for a few days. Maybe the water filtration thing might be even more important than food. We can rearrange our priorities based on our judgment. So how does this translate to your topic? So you look at the criteria someone is using. We talked about free college last time. Right now, I don't know if you guys heard, they're talking about forgiving student loans, or at least delaying payments right now while everybody's quarantined. So you look at what are the evidence that free college helps lift people out of poverty. Okay, so that's part where your research comes in, right? Where you guys come up with what each side is arguing and explain it to us. And eventually you'll look at both sides and decide which side you come down on or whether you're somewhere in the middle. Like maybe the first 2 years should be free, you know, and they pay a certain amount for the last 2, or whatever you think works best. And it's all based on the evidence you've done. That's why you go into it with a question rather than already thinking what it is that you want to say. You follow the evidence as opposed to coming up with a decision first, right? Because you want to base it on what you found in terms of hard evidence instead of just opinion. Okay? And the last thing you have after criteria, the evidence they use to support their position, the final judgment on each one. Okay? So if someone doesn't have to worry about paying for college or getting student loans or going through all that, and they can go directly, what are the advantages of that? So maybe you can compare it to other school systems around the world and judge that it worked in the United States just like it does in other countries. So once you kind of say, this is their point, you know, more people who are poor may consider college if it doesn't cost them, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars in debt eventually. And so overall, your judgment would be, this is one of the reasons that we want to support free college in the United States. Okay, so it's kind of like bringing it all together at the end. You have like a topic sentence that says, this is why I believe what I believe, one of the reasons. This is the evidence that supports it, right? And then this is the overall judgment, because otherwise we may come to another judgment, right? So that's how you want to build the structure of your paper. When you're doing your reading, you want to look at, and you want to look at good evidence. So where's the best evidence at that you can find? Where are you going to look for your sources?
Wikipedia.
That again?
I said Wikipedia, but I was just playing.
Yeah, we're going to get an overview, but let's say you're starting to dive into things that are going to support both sides' positions. What's the difference between a scholarly and a popular? Unbiased sources, Brady. So what do you consider an unbiased source? This is tricky. Non-news sources? Yeah, I mean, it can depend. It's not like you can't just use, I mean, you can use some, everyone's got bias, right, to a certain extent because we're human beings. But some people actively try, I mean, you guys don't know this world, but in the world I grew up in, the news tried to be neutral. Like they would just report the information rather than actively, you know, taking a position. Well, yeah, calculators would be non-biased. Yeah. So like numbers, it'll take your calculators and raise you like statistics, right? You got to be careful with those, like depending on the source, like Brady's talking about. But you have to look at, do they have like, they have a reason to argue one way or another. If you're a video game producer and you're arguing that video games don't cause violence in children, you have sort of a built-in bias, right? Doesn't mean they can't use that information if they've done actual work on it, but you have to let us know about that so we kind of know what their bias is. You guys follow me? Evaluating sources is really tricky. I did say you guys have to have 3 scholarly sources. He talked about that in the library. These are written by experts. You can't have bias unless it impairs their ability to argue. Okay. There's some people who are so partisan that they're going to like obscure facts. We're going to talk about how to look at a source and figure out if they're using bad arguments. I would say don't use that source if they're going to use a bad argument or a false argument. They're called logical fallacies, and we're going to spend a lot of time on them starting next week.
Got those.
Because many people get fooled by logical fallacies and misinformation, and people know they're doing it, or sometimes they don't know. Educated about it. This is part of what makes college students more, informed, is that they know when the rhetorical tricks are out there that are trying to like get somebody to do something they want them to do without necessarily. So like they'll appeal to your emotions. If you don't vote for my candidate, they're going to give all of the money away to everyone who's grifting the government. Or if you don't vote for my candidate, they're going to bail out corporations over people. So you try to scare them. That's not an argument, okay? You have some actual evidence, that's what you want to go for. But scholarly articles are written by experts, and they generally have hard evidence, and the best ones are peer-reviewed, which means somebody in their expertise took a look at them and approved them. So like when he was talking in the library about scholarly articles, like they have to go through a whole editorial process and they'll go back to the author and they'll come back. Scholarly books, that's what he was talking about. That basically we have to review what that person said, make sure it's accurate before it gets published. So of course it's got an extra layer of credibility. Okay. But that does not mean you can't use popular sources, because especially with you guys using the most recent controversies, you might find more information to go with it that helps you appeal fairly to people's emotions, because there are unfair and fair emotional appeals. Okay. Generally, unfair emotional appeals appeal to the worst in us, like our biases and our hatreds and our fears. And the fair emotional appeals try to appeal to like our care for our fellow man, our sense of community, the good stuff. Okay? They're both legit appeals, but you want to use your powers for good as opposed to evil. Okay? So when you start looking for sources, just remember each time you find a source, you want to make clear what the criteria is, like in your topic sentence, in your paragraph. And you provide the evidence. And then the overall judgment. That's the structure of the comparison. Anybody have any questions? Good so far. So you're going to find sources. Look, the library is the first place you want to go. Okay. Because they weeded out a lot of the crappy information already. You guys know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't think the National Enquirer's in the databases. I hope it's not. You know, stuff that's sensational and just entertaining still might be in the library. But at least you've got the ratings when you look things up. Excuse me. That tells you, hold on a second. That tells you if something's a scholarly source, then you know it's a good quality source. So they kind of weed out something. And then, yes, after you go to the library, you can go to Google. But do pay attention. You have to do a little bit more due diligence if you're looking at sources on Google. Like, do you recognize the publication? right? So what are some publications out there that you might be familiar with that might have a reputation that you trust?
The New York Times.
New York Times. Come on, guys, you're making Robert do all the work. Yeah, were you in Florida or somewhere? It looks really nice there.
Yeah, I am in Florida. You said a thing I trust. I had it on mute. I'm sorry. Is that what you was asking me?
Yeah, that's okay.
I trust my mom, I guess.
Come on, New York Times, what else?
BSC News.
CNN. Yeah, I like CNN.
CNN. Now, some of the networks, people feel are biased. You're going to hear a lot of information that says, no, they're biased. We're not biased. So you've got the whole Fox, CNN, MSNBC. They're all run by people, right? They're all going to have their biases. So beyond that, when you go look at the popular sources, you kind of have to look at the reputation of the publication. Are they considered a liberal or right-leaning or left-leaning publication? It doesn't mean you can't use your information like I was saying, but it means you have to judge it through a different lens, and you have to show that lens to your audience so they know where someone's coming from.
I've heard of one of the news.
Go ahead, Robert. What?
Sorry, I've heard of the one of the newspapers being a like white supremacist group. Do you know which one that is?
I do not know. If you go to Wikipedia, you can Wikipedia like publications that are considered conservative, liberal, white supremacist, and then you want to avoid the ones that are extremes.
Yeah.
Certainly, they try to misinform people. Extremism. Okay. But with everything you do, even the major publications get something wrong. So you have to always be aware of what they're coming from and what their sources are. Sometimes I like CNN too, but sometimes I don't always agree with what they're, they'll tend to like talk to 5 voters and then they don't exactly say that that represents all the voters, but they're kind of implying it. Are you guys following me? They'll do one of those like, here, let's talk to Trump voters. Here, let's talk to Bernie voters. Here, let's talk to Biden voters. And it doesn't come out right and say it, but you can't really say that all voters, that's a logical fallacy we're going to talk about called hasty generalization. That basically means that you take 2 or 3 examples and you make a judgment about a whole group. So stereotypes are often based on this. So all Irish, since it's been St. Patrick's Day, all Irish people drink. All blondes are dumb. What are some stereotypes you guys are familiar with? Gingers have no souls? This is one I was not aware of, Isaac. I think Brady is offended. But basically, you take like 2 or 3 experiences you have and make a judgment about the whole group based on not enough evidence. That's what a hasty generalization is. I went to this one Burger King and it was really bad, so all Burger Kings are bad. You guys follow me? So yeah, you have to be careful of people who are making, you know, or name calling is another one we're going to talk about. Argument ad hominem, which is basically attacking a person instead of their ideas. So instead of having a legitimate debate about an issue, you basically try to assassinate their character, because if we don't like them, we won't agree with them. You see this a lot in politics. You know, any kind of name calling or basically trying to make the candidate look bad rather than talking about the policies, winning the argument ad hominem or attacking a person instead of making an argument. But yeah, I don't care how many older drivers that you've run into that are bad drivers. That doesn't mean, like, say you've had 6 older people run you off the road, or elders. You can't judge and say all older people are bad drivers based on that small pool of samples. Does it mean it's not true? No. It just means your evidence is not enough. Now, if we go look at like insurance tables from major car insurance companies, they'll have actual statistical evidence over a wide sample that shows, I think it's when you hit 70, your driving tends to become a little less perfect. That's evidence. You guys follow me? So sometimes they'll sneak it into you. Yes, Alexis, maybe. Yeah. They'll sneak it in to try to prove their argument or add to their argument when it really isn't enough evidence. It could be true, what they're arguing. They're just using bad evidence. So sometimes we get tricked. Okay. So when you're looking at your sources, start at the library. Then you can go to Google, but always be aware of the reputation of the publication and what should you look at for the author. What do we want to know about the author?
Their like personal experience, background, basically.
Their background, right? Are they like just a reporter who's an electronic reporter who, a tech reporter who doesn't have any vested interest that you know of in the company? Then you could say that they're probably more legit than somebody who's like they're interviewing, say, the creator of a product who's probably pretty invested in his product. Doesn't mean you can't use his information. We just have to take it with a grain of salt, right? Now, for this next paper, you're not going to be biased. You're going to give an equal sort of coverage of both sides of the issue, right? Then in the research paper, you can definitely come with your opinion, but it's going to be based on evidence, you know, logic, statistics. Okay. Background, yeah. You want to know what's their motivation for writing? Is it just to give us information, or is it try to persuade us? And then, how well do they argue? Right? If they're using logical fallacies and bad arguments, danger, Will Robinson. Do not approach, do not consider. Do they use bad arguments? We'll talk more about which sources are legitimate and which are not. Does everybody know where they're going to start doing their research? Now is the time to ask if you're not sure. Good. Okay, so the objective for Monday is a first draft, right? You want to be hitting around, 2 to 3 pages. Look at both sides of your issue. At least 3 points on both sides. Evidence to support those points that the opposition or pro or con is using. Okay. And you want to look for quotes that add to your paper. So if you read something and think they said it really well or in a convincing way, put a pin in it, right? Also, we're moving into the research portion of the class, so we're going to start doing a different type of writing, okay? So it's more academic and formal. We're going to talk more about this on Monday. And it uses quotes from experts and others, you know, or maybe somebody's story that appeals to our emotions in order to add some flavor to our issue. You don't want more than your 10% of your paper to be directly quoted. Now we'll talk about other ways to get sources in besides, because your paper eventually is going to be about a 50-50 deal. So 50% of it is you explaining the main points and the evidence. And the other half is the evidence. Okay. I have a TED Talk that I'm going to post on Blackboard also that I'd like you guys to look at. But for homework, with the first draft, the comparison contrast, your issue, okay, and then watch the TED Talk video that I'm going to post, and I'll send it out as an announcement. Questions? All right, so everybody knows what we're going to work on. It's going to cut off our meeting here in about a minute. So remember, when you're building the paper, what are the criteria they're using to argue their side? What is the evidence they have? And how should we understand that evidence? Okay. All right, if there are no questions, I'll let you guys go, and anybody, I have about a minute left if anybody has any questions and they want to stick around about their specific paper. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on Monday. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Anybody have any questions about their specific paper?
So are we writing on the topic of free college, or we get to pick our topic?
This is the topic you want to do for your research paper. You can pick it. You can do free college if you want.
Wait, I'm talking about for the paper that's due Monday.
For the paper that's due Monday, they're both on the same topic. The
Okay.
last two papers are going to be on the same thing. They may cut me off, Caleb. So if you have more questions, email me.
All right, I can just email you.
But yeah, you're choosing a controversial topic. The first one's an informative paper. Here's what both sides think, and the research paper will be what your opinion is.
Okay.
Sorry to cut you off. We still have, it hasn't cut us off yet. So, you know what topic you want to do?
All right. No, I really don't know which